back to The Real Story with Jeannie Ives. It's my pleasure to be up here in Wisconsin and sitting down for an interview with Dr. Carol Swain. She is going to be the star speaker at tonight's event. It's a Freedom Night up here in Wisconsin. And so, Dr. Swain, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
It's my pleasure, and I believe it might be my first time in Wisconsin.
Oh my, that's interesting. That's great. Well, I know that you keep a busy schedule, and I think that my listeners are going to be very interested in just knowing a little bit about you, but I'll be honest with you. I think that many of my listeners don't really know much about you. So by way of introduction, I know that you are pretty proud of the stories that you've written, and basically GED to PhD. Maybe you can start with that as part of your life story and what you meant when you wrote that book, GED to PhD.
That's not a book,
but
that's just a line out of my life.
A line out of your life, right.
I am working on a book,
okay,
a memoir that will talk about my life. And this evening, the title of my talk is Truths That Transformed Me. And it will, maybe it has a surprise ending, but I'm telling parts of the story of my life and some of the things that helped shape my character and who I am today. And for those viewers that know nothing about me, there's plenty online. Mm-hmm. They go to my website, whether it's carolimswain.com or thepeoplenews.com. There's a 6-minute video with reenactments about my life and the poverty I grew up in. And Pray For You has a 6-minute video, what I can teach you about racism. And so if you're interested in race and America, the American dream, I would recommend those resources. But since you have me here in person, I was one of 12 children born in rural poverty, southwestern Virginia, dropped out of school after the 8th grade, married at age 16. By the time I was 21, I had 3 small children. People came into my life that encouraged me. I ended up getting a high school equivalency, going to a community college and getting the first of 5 college and university degrees. I was very good academically. I graduated magna cum laude from Roanoke College in Salem, Virginia, while I was working full-time at the community college library. I never sought academia as a career. People came into my life, and I'm a devout Christian now, but I always was aware of the spiritual elements of life. Mm-hmm. And so I saw the spirituality even before I was a Christian, but people came into my life. They steered me into academia. I was painfully shy until I had a Christian conversion experience in my 40s, and God took away my fear, and He impressed on my mind He had given me a message bigger than me, and that I was to focus on the message, and that He was the only one I had to please. And so when I realized that what made me shy was that I thought people would laugh at me because of my funny Southern accent, or I might make a grammatical mistake, that kept me silent. But once I knew I only had to please God, I was free to speak. I became like Oprah. I could take the microphone and wade out into the audience.
I mean, that's just terrific. So you have essentially lived what we call the American dream.
I have.
You truly have.
And I'm still living it.
And you're still living it. You teach at Vanderbilt University.
No.
Isn't that correct?
No, well, I'll give you the fast version of that.
Okay.
I was a professor for 28 years. My first position was at Princeton University. Most people don't get tenure there. I got it early. I won 3 national prizes. My first book has been cited by the Supreme Court. I left Princeton in 1999-2000. That was around the time that I had my conversion experience, became a devout believer. I moved to Nashville and I taught at Vanderbilt until 2017. And when I left, it was amidst an era when conservatives were being targeted. Mm. And I myself was targeted because of an opinion piece I wrote criticizing Islam. But I would not agree with people who say I was forced out. I was not forced out. The university was happy to have me because they needed me. Whenever the wealthy conservative donors complained about the university not having conservative professors, they said, oh, no, that's not true. We have Professor Swain. And so at some point I decided that, okay, I wasn't getting any younger. I felt like I couldn't be my best self in a situation where I felt marginalized, but also it was taking a toll on my health.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to take early retirement. I've never looked back. I gave up my tenure, worked very hard to get tenure, and I walked away from it. Best decision I ever made in my life. And tonight you'll learn why.
Okay, well, that's terrific. Our audience is going to have to be held in abeyance until we don't want to reveal anything ahead of time, although this is being taped. Well, that's an interesting resume that you have there. And so, was there any controversy? I mean, you know, every university has controversy all the time. What was? Just give me one thing out of your college times that you found.
I can tell you that I have always been an out-of-the-box thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes people welcome that, but prophetically, and prophetically, you know, we use that in the church world.
Yes.
But in the secular world, they would say that I was prescient. All my work has been prescient. So I've been ahead of my time.
Yes, you have.
And so even people that are non-believers give me credit for that. And so they do listen and they do follow me. And, you know, I'm going to say this, and this is being recorded, and so it could change tomorrow, but I'm still on Twitter. I'm still on Facebook. I'm also on the conservative platforms, but I have far more followers on Facebook, you know, 96,000, Twitter, 87,000. They kind of keep you stuck there. It's not growing, but I have that kind of influence. And through the PragerU videos, I reach more than 78 million people around the world. And so far more than I could have reached in a classroom. And I took a risk. I'm a risk taker. Mm-hmm. Took a risk and stepped out from academia. I now have...
Can you still take risks in academia?
Where courage is called for, but you have to be strategic. And I have a whole lesson for young people about strategy, because I think that we need people in the pipeline. We don't need a situation where like 98% of the professors are liberal.
That's what you have, though.
Well, pretty much. But I can tell you that I think that if we employ some of their tactics, now I'm not talking about, I always encourage conservatives to read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals.
Yes.
And, you know, he encouraged people to use infiltration, deception, and manipulation. Now, being a good Christian, you can't do all of those, but you can infiltrate. And the Bible tells us to be as wise as a serpent, as innocent as a dove. And in the Bible, people use a lot of subterfuge. And subterfuge, you know, you could call it deception. When David feigned that he was insane, I say that for some conservatives, especially the young people in college, you don't have to let everyone know what you're thinking.
That's right.
And especially when a new school year starts, whether it's high school or elementary school or whatever it is, the wisest thing is to keep your mouth shut for a while and get the lay of the land, figure out who you're in the classroom with, and you don't have to challenge everything. But there are people with personalities like mine, and they're called to speak up.
That's right.
But everyone's not. And I think that we need those people.
That's true, because otherwise we wouldn't have, you know, liberal TikTok videos going viral,
right?
So that we couldn't find out what the other side's thinking, or we wouldn't have Project Veritas or Data Goliath.
You have to have infiltrators, and so you have to have people that get access. And the way the left were able to accumulate so much power was they kept their heads down low. They moved through the system. They got strategically placed. They hired people like themselves, and they replicated themselves, and then they took over. And I think that for conservatives...
Well, they've certainly taken over when it comes to the university setting. I still think that we do need a lot more professors to
we need a long-term strategy.
Yes, we do.
Because they use the long-term strategy.
I have said before that I think that education is a conservative mission field.
I do too.
You know,
and I think something like our kids, our precious kids.
Yes.
Like there's a part of me that says, for these, especially these wealthy people, you're insane if you send your kid off to the Ivy League or some school that gives you bragging rights, where their lives are going to be destroyed and all the money you work for is going to be used to support things that are contrary to your values.
So you know what?
But
Okay.
there are some kids that are grounded in their faith or grounded in their conservative values. They know exactly who they are, that they can go into those places. And for some of them, it is their mission field. And so God may be calling some people's children into those places. And so it's not for everyone, but for the most part, I don't know that we should feed the beast with our children. Keep feeding the beast.
So I agree. I mean, I do agree. I think that some people, though, are called to be able to speak up, and they will do that. And I don't fear for my children because I know,
that they're well grounded.
They're well grounded. I was as a former conservative and a conservative politician. They have heard every argument about almost every single topic, and so they come in with a lot of background before going into the cesspool of maybe their universities.
And I think that. The church in America is in a mess. But for the churches that are trying to speak to the culture, I believe, we have Vacation Bible School, we have, classes for kids. They need to be taught worldviews. They need to encounter the arguments. Before they graduate and go off to college, we need to do a better job of letting them know how the world is going to decipher them, so that they don't hear and see things for the first time.
So there's going to be these upper echelon of students that go ahead and they matriculate out of high school and they go on to college and they can live a comfortable life in the United States. And I think that's still going to happen for quite a few people. My concern, honestly, though, is for those who maybe grew up like you did. Maybe not from a family of wealth. And I honestly grew up in South Dakota. My parents were not wealthy too. We all understood growing up that if we were going to go to college, it was going to be on us to get to college on our own. That they did not have the wherewithal to provide that for us. And we worked, all of us, my siblings, I'm one of 6, not one of 12, not half your size. But is that opportunity still available?
I think it's always going to be available.
Okay.
And I know that God is no respecter of persons, but I can also tell you that as a child, I knew I was different, and I always had a sense of urgency, and I've always felt that there was something I was supposed to do. And I had an experience several times in my youth, especially young adult, late teens, strangers coming up to me saying, you're going to be famous someday. And so, I guess God sent them to encourage me. And but I think that I was successful partially because I believed that I lived in the greatest country in the world. Mm-hmm. I believed in the American dream. I believed if I worked hard, it would make a difference, and it did. So I was not taught to hate my country, and I believed that if I worked hard, it would make a difference. And I didn't feel that because I was Black, the world was stacked against me. But I also grew up during the time when the civil rights movement was very vibrant, and I was watching it on TV, not living somewhere I could participate in it. I knew opportunities were happening. And so when I came of age and stepped out into the world, equal opportunity, non-discrimination was the law of the land. And so I benefited from the equal opportunity, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the goodwill of white people in this sense. Most of my mentors, almost all of them, were white, that encouraged me and pushed me, never treated me like I was a victim.
Well, I thought the systems were systemically racist.
I'm just telling you my experience.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. I don't agree that the systems are systemically racist.
It is.
I don't agree with that at all.
No, but it's a lie. And that
yes.
Can people do it today? My grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they have had so much more than I have. And some of them that have been more affluent, just really affluent, they are victimized because they believe that they're victims. Mm-hmm. And that's what they were taught. They went to school in predominantly white Princeton, and they have not been able to be successful in the same way. I mean, they had the potential, they had the intellect, but they have been brainwashed by the culture and the progressive whites. And the progressive whites have done so much damage to the Black community. And of course, they're pushing resegregation, because if they're Democrats, they've always been in favor of segregation. And so we're seeing
behind all of that rhetoric about, we need to help everybody more is somebody else making money off of the
but they
government.
don't care. It's not about helping people at all. It has not.
It's about them getting their spoils in the big government abyss of money that's flowing through an education system that is really not, at least in Illinois, it's not actually educating
corrupt.
people. It's
totally corrupt.
It's very much about the money and what's in it for them, and then so. I do agree with you. I think it's in smaller communities, though, where you're going to possibly see more opportunity.
I don't know, because the teachers' unions, even in Texas, where they don't have teachers' unions, they have organizations that hold people back as well.
How about Tennessee? So Tennessee
has a lot of problems.
Let's just talk about Illinois, the Illinois-Tennessee thing, because we look to Tennessee and say, listen, you've got one of the 10 lowest property taxes. We have the second highest property taxes. You have no income state taxes.
Right.
We have a massive income tax. You've got you basically get
the urban areas have the same problems.
So you're having the same problems.
And anywhere the Democrats have been in power.
So you ran for mayor of Nashville.
I ran.
How did that happen? How did that
work
work out?
2018 special election. Our first woman, female mayor.
Oh.
Her career ended in a scandal because she had an affair with her bodyguard, who was a police officer. They were traveling around the world on Nashville's dime.
Oh my heavens!
And she wouldn't resign. She was real cute, blonde, and you'd always see her hugging people, and she was beloved, but corrupt and immoral and terrible role model. And so I was part of a group of people urging her to resign. And I wrote an opinion piece. Nashville needs a choice and not an echo, or something like that. And then people started saying, I was trying to get someone, a conservative, to run, because Nashville has never elected a Republican mayor, ever, since it was incorporated.
I did not know that.
And so I was trying to get someone else to run, and I had no intentions of running. And then people started chiding me, and they were saying, people like Swain, they just like to talk, but when the time comes to stand up, they just all talk. Well, I had just left Vanderbilt in 2017, and this was 2018. I actually didn't have anything better to do. And I felt like sometimes you run for office just for the issues. So you can debate the issues, you can throw out your policy ideas, that are better than the other side. But I ran for office. I came in number 2, even though I was heavily outspent.
Awesome.
And then, so I ran in the special election, came in number 2, heavily outspent. The next year I ran in the general election. I had less support, but and for a lot of reasons. I put my campaign office in the Black community. Part of that had to do with the rent being cheaper, and I didn't have a lot of money. But the other part was that I really wanted to campaign for the votes of Black Democrats. Did a lot of door knocking, and I felt like it was sort of like a trade-off, because there were some Republicans, I believe, that were not comfortable with, they didn't know what I was doing. It didn't make sense to them. Mm-hmm. And then I visited the mosque, because all the other candidates went. I went to the mosque. I covered my head with a scarf. I didn't think anything of it, because when I first got, I had my conversion experience, we used language, got saved. It was more of a charismatic Pentecostal church, so a lot of women covered their hair.
That's right.
So to me,
you will still see in a Catholic Mass women that cover their hair during Mass.
And the thing about it is that I was going to speak to the men, and I was going to address the controversy from my opinion piece, and I didn't want them to focus on my appearance, so I covered my head. Oh, it was just a firestorm that I had vowed to Islam and all of that stuff. And then like people would, maybe if I had been a personality that apologizes, I could have graveled and apologized, but I don't apologize unless I'm sorry, unless I thought I did something wrong. If I knew I did something wrong, I refuse to apologize. And I have no respect for politicians or people who apologize when the heat comes on. For things that they mean and things that they said and things that they did.
So, well, that's interesting. So maybe a turning point in their campaign was a cultural moment and not a policy discussion.
All I know is that I enjoyed the crafting policies.
Yes.
And the night that I lost, so I've lost 2 elections. I never cried. I never shed a tear. I wasn't like Hillary. I didn't tear up the room.
Right.
I felt sad for the people that had worked so hard that I wasn't going to be able to help them. I was not going to be able to help those people and do the things I wanted to do. Well, after I lost the second election and the Democrat got elected who pretended to be conservative, and he's been one of the most radical ones.
Okay.
I had so many Democrats, so many people contacted me saying, we need you. And
so that Democrat's still in office now. It is up next year.
yeah, but I'm not running. Nobody's running against him.
Nobody's running against him.
No, but
So
I am the person who would probably be. But God has taken me in another direction, and I have too much that I'm working on that's too important. It's like God didn't. I mean, I can't speak for God, but He's given me a much bigger platform than Nashville.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to end that interview. I know you've got to get ready for your speech tonight and meeting some other guests. So thank you so much for sitting us down with me. Again, this is The Real Story with Jeannie Ives, and I hope you all have learned something. I'm very impressed by your resume and by all your hard work and what you've accomplished in your life. It's just phenomenal.
Well,
so
I hope
thank
that
you
some
for
of you
sitting with me.
Followers will follow me on, if they are on Facebook, Twitter. I have a newsletter. And my websites are carolmswain.com and bethepeoplenews.com.
And you're a prolific writer as well.
Right. And my latest book, I have 2 books from last year. One was Black Eye for America, How Critical Race Theory is Burning Down the House. That's here tonight. And then my newest book is Countercultural Living, what Jesus has to say about life, marriage, race and ethnicity, gender roles, and materialism. And it's very short books. I write short books now, not long academic books, because I want my books to be read by the American people. And each book ends with questions, where once you read the chapter, you can sort of quiz yourself, or you can have a discussion with your friends. And that's what I'm doing.
Oh, that's terrific. Great. We're going to promote your books as well.
Thank you.
Get a copy of them and show them on the podcast.
Thank you.